Great, thank you very much, colleagues, for joining us this afternoon. My name is Mary Thompson. I'm an Education Officer within Education Scotland for the STEM team, and I'm joined this afternoon by Fiona Shaw, who'll be co-presenting with me. And we have other colleagues on the call who I'm sure will be able to introduce themselves into the chat. And Fiona and I are really delighted to be able to bring this resource to you this afternoon to launch it formally. It's been informed by conversations with ourselves, Education Scotland, and Falkirk Council. We saw Julia was on the call, Cliff Manager Council and Skills Development Scotland. So what we're going to cover this afternoon is we're going to be looking at this afternoon just a little bit of introduction and background to the resource. We're going to have a little time to have a resource walkthrough. And we're going to hear from two practitioners who have been working in this field, Kira from Grangemouth High School in Falkirk and from Jack in UHI Inverness. And then an opportunity just for us to kind of hear some reflections back from yourselves about the resource, how you might use it. And that will be our time together. So a bit of time for us to talk to you, to share practice, for you to look at the resource. And also just to think about how you might use it moving forward. I do have to say that the session is being recorded, so it's just to make you aware of that, and the recording will be available to others beyond this evening's session. So we'll just kind of, oh hi Julia from sunny Falkirk, I'm glad it's sunny there, glad that you're here, and thank you so much for the contributions that you've made to informing this resource up until now. So let's get it started, and we're just going to have a little think about a connector. So if we have got 4 pictures here on the screen, which one of these so far best describes your career pathway? Is it A, B, C or D? And we'd just love you just even to give a wee indication of that in the chat. Thanks, Mrs. Bryson, you're kicking us off with a letter there, so we really appreciate it. So quite a few coming through as D seems to be the kind of the main theme so far. So we've got, I think, about 6 Ds there. Lovely, thank you so much. So D all round the houses, that's a nice phrase. I like that one too. Yeah, sometimes it does feel like that. We go round and about if our own career pathway, maybe we've tried different things or we're not quite sure where we're going. Some people have got a kind of a straight path to the sunshine in A. And we've got a couple of B's there as well. So thank you so much. It's really nice to kind of just even think what sits underneath that first reaction to where your career has taken you so far, and where you like it to take beyond this 2023. So just a kind of wee point to reflect on it and to think. And I suppose the reason we popped that in is just even think about how, hi Jack, is what actually are the pathways that our children and young people are going to take through their lives. I think it's a really interesting one to reflect and for them to think about where they might want to head. So we're just going to come to the Jamboard now. I'm going to stop sharing and hopefully Fiona will just maybe pick up some of the points that we've got coming through from that.
Thanks, Mary. Forgot I was muted. Thanks so much, those of you who've pop stuff onto the Jamboard here. When it comes to advising learners on pathways, who's involved in this process in your school. So we've got a lot of commonality across here. DYW coordinators and PTs of subjects, guidance, and that seems to be the most common thing. Then we've got a few sort of school partnerships and industry and business engagement needs, which is really interesting to see. And I think we weren't asking this question really to like try and catch anyone out. It was definitely just a sort of non-judgmental exploration of where we're at in terms of who is providing that. And it's great to hear the different ways and different people that are involved. So thanks so much for that, and hopefully reassuring that it's fairly similar across the board as well. On the next one, we were asking what are some of the STEM pathways on offer in your setting. So we've got college, university, apprentices and HIPs. Oh, apprenticeships. It's literally been one of those days where apparently I can't read words. So there we go. And feel free to just keep adding to that one, and we'll maybe pop back on here a little bit later on. So thank you, that's given us a really sort of useful starting point. So I'll come back to the resource just now. Mary, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
No, I think that was perfect. Thanks very much for doing that, colleagues. We do appreciate it. And as Fiona said, it's really great to hear kind of what the similarities are and some of the differences, because that can inspire other people to think about their practice and what's on offer too. So thank you for doing that. We'll revisit that later on in the session. So we'll just maybe move on to the next part of the presentation, and it's a wee bit about the resource and what you are really here to explore and find out about this afternoon.
So we are going to give you a chance to sort of look at the resource during the session today, but we just wanted to sort of provide a little bit of background first of all. Because of the size of the resource, I suppose it can seem quite overwhelming, but we just wanted to talk a little bit about how it could be used, I suppose. So as Mary's already said, the resource was informed by conversations between ourselves, Education Scotland, Skills Development Scotland, and 2 local authorities in the Forth Valley and West Lothian region. So you'll see their badges there on the screen, Falkirk and Clackmannanshire. And really, the aim of the resource is to sort of probe thinking about how we advise young people about STEM education and STEM jobs, and actually how sometimes we might unwittingly discourage learners from pursuing STEM. So the sort of unconscious things we might say and do, the body language, the tone of voice, etc. And I suppose this resource, obviously we developed it with STEM in mind, but I feel like a lot of the principles later on could also be transferred to that advice in general. And the whole thing is research and evidence informed. So we've looked at lots of different bodies of research and reports and things to pull this together. And I suppose we just hope that the opportunities for discussion that we've provided in the resource and the opportunities for reflection will lead to kind of action that helps to encourage a more diverse uptake in STEM pathways and jobs. And I think I mentioned the size of it can often look overwhelming, which you'll see in a minute, but we want to reassure you that there's lots of different ways it can be used. So it could be used as a whole presentation, although we probably wouldn't recommend that. It'd be a bit death by PowerPoint. Chunked. So I'll introduce in a second to the different areas that are contained. So you could use it in a departmental meeting, for example, or it could also be worked through individually. Certain sections could be worked through individually, and then you sort of come back together again, perhaps for that collaborative professional discussion at the pause points. And it is a resource that we're quite happy for you to take and use and edit and tailor it to suit your context as well. This is just sort of like the bare bones, I suppose. So once you open up the resource, you'll be met with the different aspects. These 8 key areas that you see here are all linked and come from the research about how we might improve diversity in STEM. So you've got, I won't read them out actually, but you can sort of see the different areas that are here. And in the resource, all of these key areas are hyperlinked to help you navigate your way through the resource. And at the end of each aspect explored, there's also an invitation to reflect. So that's shown here by the pause button. And you can also return to the home page. So this is basically the home page by using this blue house icon, and that's on every slide as well. Down at the bottom right here, there's a sort of quick link that takes you straight to further resources at the end of the resource. And also we've tried to highlight throughout the resource connections with children's rights and the importance of that, and it being sort of on everyone's minds and everyone's responsibility. And we've also tried to make links to the STEM Nation Award. So I'll skip on to that bit just now. So a bit of background about the STEM Nation Award, if you haven't come across it before. It's developed by Education Scotland to celebrate, promote and build on effective practice in STEM education within sectors and across sectors. And there are 5 elements to the award, which you'll see on the screen here. Leadership in STEM, STEM family and community learning, employability and STEM partnership working, STEM curriculum and learner pathways, and equity and equality in STEM. And we've got a wide range of roles represented on the call today. So you know, if your setting is looking at this, you might be able to contribute towards an awards submission, should you wish to do so. So we've popped on the screen there the QR code that takes you to more information about the STEM Nation Award. I'll also just pop the bit.ly link into the chat pane here as well, so that you can have a look at that if you would like to. So what we wanted to do was just highlight the connections between the STEM Nation Award and this resource, just to help make those connections for you. The leadership element. Oh, I can actually hear someone's background noise. If you could just check if you're muted for me, please. I think that might be somebody who's maybe joined just after. So the leadership part, just thinking about that equitable access to the world of work, and looking at data in a way that promotes equity from across a range of characteristics. Family learning might be working with a diverse range of families, thinking about those hard to reach. And that links to choosing STEM. And thinking about sustained action, and that again links to sort of the STEM jobs part of this resource. And then context, images and role models, thinking about curriculum content and the images that are used within that, and that links to the curriculum part and pathways. And then lastly, sort of trying to actively remove those barriers. So this is within the resource, so I appreciate I've rushed through that fairly quickly, but if you do want to have a more in-depth look at that or the STEM Nation Award, then please feel free to do so. So if you click on one of the badges from the 8 key areas, it brings you to a sort of cover page that looks a bit like this. On the cover page, it will tell you the approximate time it will take to get through this particular section. And it also shows here the links between the rights, children's rights at the top. We've linked in the sustainable development goals to this as well, which I don't think we mentioned on the earlier slide, but we've definitely got it in the actual resource. So we wanted to help make those connections as well. And again, just that sort of STEM Nation connection. So this part of the resource explores really a little bit about the STEM landscape, in particular highlights why diversity is important. And I'll hand over to Mary to take you through a little bit about the context just now.
So yeah, this section is around about kind of, we've got some of the drivers for STEM, the first one being the policy landscape, and obviously we're taking a lot of that from the Scottish STEM education and training strategy, and very much that is encouraging that STEM for all approach and the way of thinking. And really what that means is about opening up STEM learning opportunities, pathways and jobs to everybody in Scotland. And again, opening up that thinking that you might not see something as being STEM for you, it's that STEM for everyone. We also have this wee section covers, I suppose, societal reasons, and that, I suppose, I guess, is our role as educators and just how pivotal that is, and how we in our roles can open up conversations about encouraging diversity in STEM. And the reasons for doing so are myriad, I suppose, but STEM really has kind of, I suppose, an opportunity and a route out of poverty, and working in STEM industries can really provide individuals with higher paid roles than they might otherwise get. And that, I suppose, really links to the economy. And actually, we know that STEM is just a huge part of the economy, both now and in the future. And we really are keen that we encourage our children to pursue STEM. And actually, that'll help many of the companies kind of grow and expand. And as a country, we will benefit from that. So I suppose that's just kind of some of the drivers why STEM is important and what we wanted to cover in this section. But not only that, we are really keen to think around STEM and the link to social justice. And we know that education remains one of those most effective ways to improve the life chances of all of our young people. And I suppose in this section, Fiona's alluded to the fact that we've linked in the UNCRC goals and that kind of concept of children's voice and young people's voice, and how they can be part of that kind of conversation about what they want now and what they want for their future. And we really just want to show, I suppose, just the real close link to poverty as well. And as I've just kind of mentioned there already, is that I suppose poverty affects every aspect of a child's life, from health, well-being, learning, participation, attainment, and their future outcomes. And as I've said already, STEM can help provide that route out of poverty and break that cycle for some of our families. And I suppose it's our role as educators and as partners to consider how we can help do that. and we've got some links in the resource to sort of the attainment challenge, and that can be perhaps useful for you to explore that thinking further, should that be helpful. We'll just pop on to the next wee slide just to give you an idea of what this resource is about. We have here, hopefully you can see by now that I suppose the resource just really provides that starting point for you as educators to unpick some of the ideas around diversity in STEM. And really, there are so many pathways that just didn't exist 20 years ago, and yet we as teachers are key influencers and supporters of children's, I suppose, option choices in secondary school, and how we, through our conversations, can help remove some of those barriers that are either real or perceived for our learners, and just help encourage that opportunity to think around STEM and the opportunities it can provide to help them, the young people pursue exciting opportunities available to them. So we're just going to pop on to the next wee bit, and that's almost enough from us. So over to you, Fiona.
Thank you. I was just getting the Jamboard link ready again. So those of you who clicked ahead on the Jamboard would have seen we've popped this question in here as well. Just this is actually part of the resource, and this is one of the pause and reflect opportunities, but we thought actually it might be a useful time to do this in the session as well. So if you've just come in or you didn't get the link to the Jamboard before, I've just popped it back into the chat pane again. And yeah, I suppose the why is always really important in everything we do. So we're keen to think about or hear your thoughts on how you connect to what we've sort of presented so far, the context part of that, and what's behind your work with learners in STEM. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes to have a think about that on the Jamboard, and then I'll maybe pull up some of the whys that people have once you've had a chance to do that. If you have already thought about your why, because I can see there's a couple of things come up, but this is such a hard question, especially at the end of near the end of the term, at the end of the day. So don't worry if you haven't necessarily got that off the bat. But what we were going to do next was actually give you a chance to explore the resource a little bit. So what I'll maybe do is just pop the link to the resource into the chat pane, and then I'm going to just share a little bit on how to navigate that. So hopefully when you click on the link, it will take you to this page here. We put a bit of background here as well, just if anyone happened to land on the page without coming to this session. So you've got AIM, how to use the resource, which we've already been through, and then a bit of background. So if you scroll down to resource introduction and download, there is an introduction video, which is me talking, lucky you, just going through essentially what we went through with you today, so you can sort of lift that and share it if you would like to. And then on the right hand side here, we've got the actual PowerPoint download. So if you just click on that, we're going to give you sort of a few minutes to explore that. And I appreciate we're not giving you a huge amount of time, but please do just have a look through it. And then when you come back from that, we'll actually move on to the next section that's here and hear from Grangemouth High School about how they've used it. So I will shut up, and hopefully everyone can access that and download it okay. It should download as a PowerPoint. Let us know if you're having any issues. If you're on a mobile, you can view it and download it that way, but hopefully you can access that, and I'll just give you a chance. If you want to post in the chat as you think about it, then please do feel free to do that as well.
Fiona, I was just going to jump in there and just say that actually we included all of the notes, in a version of which we've sort of taken for this evening's session, but actually all of the notes are available in the notes section of the PowerPoint, so you can take them, use them, adapt them, and we're not precious around that. We just hope that would be helpful for you. So yeah, let us know how you're getting on, and we'll come back. What time, Fiona, will we come back together?
Hello everyone. Hopefully you managed to get that downloaded and have a quick look at it. Just being a bit conscious of time, obviously we're really keen to hear what you think about the, just sort of initial thoughts. Obviously we're not expecting a full-on analysis of the resource, but feel free to just sort of pop those into the chat pane, and we'd really appreciate any thoughts or feedback that you have. And I think what we'll do is move on to Kira's input just now. So Mary, I don't know, I'll hand back to you for this, but I think.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think Kira can probably introduce herself, but we're delighted to have Kira with us from Grangemouth High School, and she has been, I suppose, one of our guinea pigs. If we're allowed to say that to a scientist, I'm not sure if we can. But anyway, Kira was really keen, I suppose, to embrace this as a new principal teacher at the school, and just to see what it brought up for conversations wise in terms of the school, the staff, and the provision for the learners there at Grangemouth. So we're really delighted that Kira's decided to come along to share our practice and to share the reflections that she and the staff have been having around it. So we'll just pass over to you, Kira, and Fiona's going to pop up the slides. So thanks so much for coming along.
No problem, thanks. Nice to see you all. So basically at Grangemouth High School, we've kind of called it the Diversity in STEM programme. And what we were looking to do was see if we could make any changes at all in the way that people select science subjects going forward. So we worked in science just for this year, and we hope to roll it out further across the school next year. So from the second slide, you'll kind of get an idea of the programme we put together. So our first step was to change the delivery of the courses. So we have a lot of shared classes. We have a lot of part-time teachers, and we share first and second year a lot. So we decided that what we would do is we would change to deliver 2 sciences at a time. So we delivered biology and physics, as these were the ones that had the greatest kind of issue in the numbers and percentages, depending on the diversity of the genders of the pupils. So we planned to run these really from before Christmas right up to course selection, so that we could get an idea of if they had any sort of impact on choices. Then after that, we tried to make it more project-based learning in our topics. We're looking to go forward that way in BGE anyway. So we were given a shot at this point with our sales topic and electricity topic to try and incorporate other subjects around the school, to see if we could kind of pique interest in different types of pupils who may not necessarily think sales is what they're interested in. So we managed to work with the PE faculty. And when we were doing our cells, tissues, organs and systems, they worked with us and they did parts on the heart, lung and muscles, and how those processes work during exercises when they were doing their fitness suite work. In the electricity topic, we worked on understanding how wiring works in your houses. So it was just another way to try to make the projects applicable to real life in some sort of way, make the subjects applicable to real life. After that, once we put this plan together, Fiona kindly made us a couple of videos, and our science staff completed some training in our November in-service day on diversity in STEM. So we had a good look through the resource. We had a couple of video clips to look at, and all the science faculty kind of got on board with this idea. So they then had a look at the resources. There was a shortened and longer version, and basically had a look at what we were planning to do throughout the year. So the next step of what we did was we then took all our S2 pupils to the Career Hive. So what the Career Hive was it was in Edinburgh. We got 150 of our S2 pupils to go, which was great out of the number of 180. We went to the National Museum in Edinburgh, and the Career Hive had a lot of focus around gender and diversity in STEM subjects and in STEM careers. So our pupils got to hear from 2 female guest speakers on what they had done at school, what they'd done post-school. They got to have a lot of hands-on experiments related to careers, major focus on gender and STEM. They got to do a questionnaire on that. And it was interesting that quite a lot of them at the time did think that gender affected the choices. And then when they did the quiz at the end, having the ladies both spoken, it was interesting that they both had said, I didn't know you could do a career in that. So it was quite interesting in that aspect. So they had kind of a lot of skills things as well that they worked on in there. So from there, we then moved on to do an LGBTQ and STEM day. So that happened in November. So these were all sort of chronologically occurring as we were planning what we were doing. And that was a major focus on females in STEM and different reasons for it. The resource itself came mostly from the Royal Society and the Pride in STEM movement. So we got that resource from them, and we took it upon ourselves to have a go with a number of different classes on it. So if we look even at the next slide with some of the content of it, it spoke a lot about obviously looking at STEM careers, looking at LGBTQ people in STEM and stereotypes of scientists. So there was a story of the astronaut Sally Ride and her life and what she did to become an astronaut, and it had turned out later on that she was in a same-gender relationship, but that wasn't released until she died. So the story of that was told through the lesson, and then throughout that we also challenged pupils' thinking about the media, social media and the papers, what kind of headlines, what kind of titles, what kind of social media they're reading on a daily basis, and how even the smallest of words in the language can make such a difference to how you think about gender, how you think about people in high-powered roles or any roles. So the pupils were really, really engaged in that. And then we moved on to do some experiments ourselves. So it was all about how we could link it into our subjects. And we've got, you'll see in the next one, did some pride flags with some sugar and density columns. We did cereal dilutions. We let pupils kind of pick the flag they liked. So we were trying to make it, it's not about, you know, diversity is for everyone. So pick what colours you like, or make your kind of density columns, and we made our kind of different flags. So it was open to everyone. We did it all of S2 in our acids topic, lab science, and our STEAM club that we've got going on. So we've got a kind of STEM club with art involved, which has been really interesting as well. So we're really lucky in the school to have a really, really good careers officer who has one-to-one meetings with pupils prior to selection of subject choice. So they're quite well informed in what they would like to pick anyway. And then if we move on to slide 7, this is where we started using the resource. So every teacher in science did a which science lesson. The purpose of that was to deliver information on careers in science subjects, careers in STEM, and this is where the resource was extremely, extremely useful for us. It gave us local career information, and I've kind of popped in some of the slides that you'll have just seen when you were looking through the resource as well. So we also put a lot in from any of the slides that involved the local area, the world of work. We spoke to the pupils about what their barriers were. We did kind of whiteboard questions with them, and we did a little card task as well. So it was a whole lesson that we used on this. There's so much in the resource that you could use, and it was so easy for the pupils to understand. They were really, really related to it, very, very visual. It was fantastic actually. The full science faculty were raving about it. It was the kind of best thing we'd ever had to use, and to have such local career information was just wonderful. After that, we then went to do a kind of questionnaire with pupils. Just before the subject selection, we wanted to find out what they were thinking, what their ideas were. So we kind of asked them, did they know what career they would like? Had they changed their career path ideas? Have their subject choices affected them? So I've kind of got a key up in the corner if you're having a look at it. Just yes, no and other, blue being the yes, orange being the no, green just being other. But it was interesting to see that in some way a lot of them said science subjects hadn't affected their choices at all. That's okay, what could we do with that? As long as they're kind of enjoying it as they go along. But the subjects hadn't really affected what they chose. A lot of them had picked their career path, a lot of them hadn't. And quite a lot of the time as they were doing the quiz, they were sort of saying to us, we don't know what we want to be yet, we don't know. So it's quite insightful in that way. But if we have a look at the kind of next page, we only did 8 questions in it, but it was interesting then to see the gender questions from there. So unfortunately I didn't have a picture, and I had asked the Career High, but they hadn't kept it on the selections there around the gender, when a lot of them had said they did think it affected it. But we kind of felt that over the year and everything we'd spoken about, it was nice to see that the choice of subject in the mainframe was not affected by gender now. Choice of career, again, in the main, not really affected. And we had a lot of pupils respond to that. We had 115 responses. So from the second year, we didn't get the whole lot, but with absence and timings of when we did it. But we still felt 115 responses was really, really strong. And then a lot of them said then that science subjects are going to help them with their career path. And they believed again, mostly, there's enough career choice for every gender. So we were hopeful that this had made a difference in pupil selection and what they were going to take going forward. So the last part of it then for this year for us was just the numbers. Having a look at our science choices for 2021 and 22, it seems like chemistry percentage wise has pretty much stayed reflective. It always seems to be a half and half, there or thereabout. But we had noticed that we seem to have some sort of 10% change in the numbers of pupils of the opposite gender picking physics and biology. So as you'll see in our 2021 to 2022, our biology was 22% male, and we had increased that to 33% male this year. Physics was 85% male, dropping to 74% this year, in which case we've increased the females by 10%, there or thereabout again. I can't say for sure that it's everything that we've done. It could be what's in fashion, it could be what people are watching on television. It's difficult to know. One thing that's been really, really interesting to see though is during the cells and the biological topic, we also did a little bit on health, and then of course we did a bit on the environment as well as a separate project. One of our courses this year compared to last year is environmental and lab science. Got a huge number of boys, male pupils, that have selected that this year. So we do wonder if there's something we've kind of said or done along the way there, or whoever's teaching it, or something that we've done along the way has had an impact there. But that's so far what we've done in Grangemouth. It's been really, really interesting all year, and it's been great to get the science staff on side. And like I say, I can't up the resource enough. It's fantastic. There's so much you can use from it. The staff have had a great look at it. They've had a great use out of it, and to be able to incorporate it into what we were teaching with the pupils, to have something so adaptable has been brilliant.
Thanks so much, Kira. That was amazing, and it was so nice to hear like the passion and how useful you found the resource. So thank you for that. Thank you so much, and obviously really lovely to see all the different things, different activities, different things that you've sort of been trialing and running with, and then the positive impact that's had as well. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
So if anyone's got any sort of questions or comments for Kira, you can either pop them into the chat pane. We've also got sort of bike park section. I can't remember if we mentioned that at the beginning on the Jamboard. So maybe just in the chat pane, that's probably easier. And we'll try and sort of pick them up at the end. Timing wise, I think we'll move on to our next speaker just now. So thanks again, Kira, and
thank you.
Yeah, we'll thanks, and we'll come back at the end if there's any questions, if that's all right. So our next speaker wasn't necessarily involved in using the resource. But when we heard about this project, we thought actually this is another example of something that could come about as a result of this resource, and was actually a really nice example of those sort of alternative pathways and involving learners who might not normally choose STEM. So Jack, I have got the PowerPoint open. We had some issues trying to get that across, so I'm happy to share that and move it on if that makes it easier for you.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, well, so our next speaker is Jack McIntyre from University of Highlands and Islands in Inverness, and he's going to talk about their use of apprentices to sort of run workshops for teaching staff and pupils from 2 rural secondary schools. So bear with me a second while I just get this loaded up. Jack, feel free to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Jack McIntyre from University of Highlands Islands. I'm our current engineering associate. So I do engineering-based research in areas such as STEM, the circular economy and sustainability. Also research into areas like robotics, electronics, and yeah, sort of a wide swath of different things in engineering and technology, with also a keen interest in additive manufacturing and 3D printing. So yes, this project that I'm going to have a wee chat to you about today has been a collaboration between the University of Highlands and Islands Inverness and Skills Development Scotland. And it's been a couple of years in the running. So the first couple of years, let's say we'll move on to, can we go to slide 1, please? So the first couple of years, we conducted a series of surveys to gauge opinions on STEM futures, STEM apprenticeships, and just in general, attitudes towards education in the Highlands and things like that. So what I'll say is, to start off with, there is a caveat that these were done over 2020 and 2021, at the height of the COVID pandemic. So some of the information may skew a little bit because of, us being under lockdowns and things like that. But the information that came through was quite strong, and we had over 600 participants across the Highland region, pupils from the ages of 15 to 18. So from areas like cities like Inverness to more rural areas like Lochmervey, Wick, and different towns across the Highland region like that. So what we did was we asked a series of questions about what would they like to do to learn a bit more about STEM, what was their impressions about different areas of STEM, and how do they view the Highlands, and do they view the Highlands being somewhere strong for either a future career or education. So what we found initially was that the three main factors that pupils are really interested in seeing and getting a bit more information on were trying new technology. So, having a chance to experiment and play about with things like embedded systems or 3D printers or 3D scanner technology, those kind of things. They're also keen to hear more from industry, so local businesses, what's going on in the local STEM space among different organisations, and they were also keen to hear a bit more about from current students, current apprentices, and how do you actually get an apprenticeship and things like that. So that was quite positive. What we found was that mathematics in particular was viewed quite negatively, and it seems to be that mathematics is viewed sort of almost like a gatekeeper for getting into STEM among students, and they found that it was the fear of mathematics that's stopping them from carrying on. So we had to find a way to demystify maths and find how that links into the local industry and areas like that. But the most important thing that we found actually was the level of disengagement among 15 to 18-year-olds in the Highlands during that region. As I said though previously, the COVID pandemic might have skewed this slightly, so that's one thing to bear in mind with regards to our data. But yeah, we found that a majority of our answers when it comes to talking about the Highland region or what's their future career and different things like that skewed more to very neutral responses, or to responses in the case of if they've chosen a STEM career. Over half had stated that they hadn't decided on their future after secondary school, which for 15 to 18-year-olds in that critical period before they're moving from secondary to either tertiary education, further training or employment is not the thing that we want to hear. So how can we increase the engagement there? Can we move on to the next slide, please? So diving into that data a bit more, we were wanting to see, okay, we know that they want to try technology. We know that they want to hear from industries and apprentices and folk like that. But how would they prefer a potential STEM workshop to be consisted of? So we had a chat with the pupils through another survey to gauge who would they prefer to carry out a STEM workshop, and we found that employers and apprentices were the sort of higher level of people that they wanted to see there, with the caveat that a vast majority had no preference at all, but taking that information that is employers and apprentices that they wanted to hear from, they thought that's a really good avenue to look towards. With regards to how they would like it to be delivered, the two primary areas that they wanted were it had to be in person and it had to be during school hours. And the three major areas, linking into what we found with our other survey, is that they wanted to, try out technology, they wanted to hear industry experience, they wanted to visit local STEM industries, and they also wanted to learn how do you get an apprenticeship. So with everything there, coupled with the subjects that they wanted to learn more about for the future, being robotics, electronics and programming, and sustainability and renewables, we had a good case for building a series of STEM workshop provision. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what we came up with was the idea for our STEM equity project. So with all the information that we've got from our surveys, we found that we needed to include industry partners in a coalition. We had to train up current apprentices to be STEM mentors to do that provision. We had to include visits to local industry or local STEM providers who have areas of high technology or things such as robotics, electronics and renewables. And on top of that, we also had to make sure that for the provision of this, the schools couldn't be impacted financially negatively. So towards that end, we had to make sure that the transport for schools involved in the project was covered by the project partners. So putting that all together, in October last year, we started doing the development of a series of workshops. Can we go to the next slide, please? So these are a couple of photographs from the various workshops that we did over a four-week period, a month period, and to go and how do we develop them. What we decided was that because of the keen interest in local STEM industry, we wanted to base our workshops around local industry STEM. So each workshop was based on the work of one of our project partners. So our first workshop was based on the work of Diageo with fermentation experiments, and then also experiments in potential chemical spills and how do you solve them ethically. So we get students involved, and we have a water bath with oil that's sitting on the top, and their task was they were giving a series of materials that they could use, and they had to come up with an experiment to remove that oil from the water without contaminating the water underneath, and think about that ethically. And also incorporate areas of mathematics like cost benefit analysis of the different materials and know what would that cost to have the best, most efficient design. So that worked quite well. We had an electronics embedded systems based workshop based on the work of our local partner LifeScan, where the students had to build an electronic circuit using a breadboard and multiple different components to build a input-output system, in this case based on traffic lights, and then have the capability of then communicating to independent systems that they've each small team and the groups have built, and then have them communicate to each other, which is fantastic. We had a renewables based workshop based on the work of Opportunity Cromarty Firth, and also with sustainability and circular economic input from fuel change. And then lastly, we also had a bridge building workshop challenge supported by West Fraser and Strathspey Railway at Inverness campus. So 4 workshops with an industry basis, looking at lots of different areas of STEM and engineering, primarily within that engineering space. And this was provided to 2 schools in the Greater Highland region, Allness and Dingwall Academy. Could we go to the next slide, please?
Jack, I'm really sorry to have to do this, but we are 2 minutes away from the end of the session. I wondered if you could maybe just sort of summarise, maybe in one sentence, like what the impact's been of this, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll obviously send out the stuff you've provided to us to participants, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, in one sentence, massive engagement. Say our apprentice mentors were the novel approach that was needed, and they created rapport with the students through the provision that really drove through and demystified STEM in the local industry. And we found that a lot of the participants have been applying to UHI for either STEM-based courses and apprenticeships, which has been fantastic. If you skip to the second last slide, there is a small 30-second video of pupils talking a wee bit about that. There we go, the middle one. There. Oh.
Sorry, I just need to make sure my sound is sharing, and we'll play this quickly.
I really enjoyed doing the electrical circuits, and it's widened my knowledge in electrical engineering and piqued my interest.
Could you hear that okay? Yeah, cool. Okay. So yeah, we've got these really lovely videos from people who participated as well, so we'll try and get those out so people can see. But it's definitely really lovely to hear how the learners were involved in that planning, and then obviously actually hear from somebody themselves. And I think those partnership links with industries, and just the, you know, connecting up skills inside the classroom as well with those industry partnerships sounds like it was really valuable. So thank you so much for that, Jack, and sorry that we had to cut you off.
No worries. If anybody wants any more information, we'll be releasing our case study into the STEM Equity Project publicly in the next couple of days. So I'll make sure that a link's sent out to everybody who'd like to read that and, you know, for more information.
Perfect. Thank
That's
you.
great, Jack. So folks, just as we come to the end of our session now, we just thought maybe even a few possibilities of what now. Hopefully you have managed to, one way or another, download the resource, and that you'll be able to consider its use, even consider it for your own professional learning, or consider its use for you as a school or a department. So we would ask that actually please feel free to look through it in more detail, and to get back in touch with us if there's anything that you feel is missing or things that you think we would like to add to or augment, please do let us know. And I suppose really that kind of brings us to, if you're going to think about using it, what's the best place to start for you? Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Hopefully you've seen that this evening. And we've just put in the kind of green circle on the right-hand side of the screen, just a few options of things that you might wish to take forward. And actually, we would be really happy as a STEM team. Obviously, Fiona and I have put the resource together, but we have our other colleagues on the call who'd be more than happy to support conversations with you, should that be helpful too. And you can get in touch with us via the STEM Education Scotland mailbox there. And we're just going to pop on to the last wee bit to say a huge thanks from us to you for giving your time this afternoon, for coming along, for showing an interest in the resource. We know it's been a wee bit rushed, so we apologise for that, but we would love your feedback on the resource and the session. And a huge thank you to Kira and to Jack for coming along, for being brave, for stepping up and for sharing their work. And Kira, we really are delighted to watch with interest just the difference that it continues to make in the work of the children and young people at Grangemouth High as you kind of continue to build on what you've done this year. So huge thanks from us to you. And we're happy to take any kind of questions or comments. We do realise we've gone beyond the time, but yeah, it's really great that you've given of your time to share with us. And I hope, Kira, you're seeing that comment there from Julia, who is the team leader QIO equivalent in Falkirk Council.